7th of October 2023. That was a fateful day. Welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. That fateful particular day after which the brutality, the reign of terror that was unleashed on the people of Gaza, and it continues unabated as we speak today as a result of that brutality, that unabated barbarism of Israeli regime led by its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Forces continues unabated till today. 41,467 innocent Palestinians have lost their lives. 91,921 people have been injured as a result of this Israel's brutality. And as we speak, there is another major development underway. The 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. In its inaugural session, we saw a lot of speeches that were made, and the continuation of those speeches is happening as we see this particular high-level segment of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly unfold. Quite notable speeches have been made, and one of the most important and the talked about thing and the topic or the issue had been the crisis in Gaza and that violence that has been perpetrated by Israel on innocent people in Gaza. Let me just quickly sum up a couple of important excerpts from those speeches which have been made by the world leaders at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says in Gaza, not only are children dying, but also the United Nations system. When we talk about Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, has urged the international community to immediately stop the violence and establish a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Talking specifically about Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, he has said, let me quote him, "This is not a war, but a crime of genocide by means of sophisticated weapons against people trapped in detention camps. There is no escape from a barrage of aerial bombing," unquote. Jordan's King Abdullah has said, let me quote him, "The United Nations is facing an unprecedented crisis, one that threatens its legitimacy and undermines global trust in its moral authority," unquote. We also know for a fact Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is representing the country at this high-level segment of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He's going to address this August gathering on 27th of September, and he is going to emphasize the resolution or the addressal of those issues which have been long pending on the United Nations Security Council's agenda, including that of Palestine. Let me quickly bring in as to what could be the possibility when we talk about the resolution of this long-standing issue on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council as we see this particular 79th session of the UNGA underway. What could be transpiring at the end of this particular session? Are there any hopes? Also, during those speeches, we have seen leaders talking about the kind of moral authority the United Nations used to have. Now there is a doubt that is being cast because it couldn't actually bring in the implementation of all those relevant resolutions regarding the Palestinian issue. For all those aspects, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Baker Younis, Arab journalist. Mr. Younis, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also on Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Jamil Khan. He is former ambassador. Dr. Jamil Khan, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Baker Younis, when we talk about the brutality, let's talk about that very fateful day of 7th of October. Ever since we have seen that reign of terror on the part of Israeli forces unleashed on the innocent people in Gaza, 41,467 people, to be exact, the figure that has been given by the health ministry, have succumbed owing to this brutality of Israel. It's about to be a year now, but there is no stopping of it. How the situation is there when we talk about Gaza in particular at this point in time?
You see, now it's 1 year since this, as you said, brutality war started against the Palestinian innocent people in Gaza. And it's 1 year since United Nations have failed, other countries have failed to stop this genocide happening in Gaza. And as we talk now, and as their highnesses are there in the United Nations, it is going on. This genocide haven't stopped, and nobody yet have stopped it. We have to understand that this creation, the Israeli state that made 1948, 1947, 1948 by the United Nations itself and been recognized by the United Nations, this creation itself is a void. Something have to be removed, because you see, this decision to make Israel is actually creating this problem. So the only way out is another decision and another statement by the United Nations that this Israeli state have to be removed, have to be, eliminated, because this actual state is a critical. No, but the Israelis are killing the people in Gaza, people in Lebanon, and now people in Yemen as well. They want to, and the very surprising thing that they don't want anybody to stand with the Palestinians. They want to kill the Palestinians, genocide the Palestinians, eliminate them from the whole world, not leaving anybody alive, destroy the hospital, their schools, their everything, and they don't want any reaction. They are asking no reaction. They are seeking no reaction from no country. And beside that, they are asking for a support. They want US to support them. They want UK to support them. They want Italy to support them. They want the whole world to support them. See, so we are actually in a situation with a country that has been made by the United Nations, and this country itself is the problem. So there is no way out, I think, from this problem other than removing Israel from the map.
Removing Israel from, that's what your view is. When we talk about the two-state solution, I'll come back to you for your deeper understanding regarding that. Also, when you talk of the United Nations creating the state of Israel, accepting it being there, and that has actually led subsequently to this sort of a state of affairs that is unfolding right now before the world's eyes as the people are being massacred over there with impunity. We have seen in that inaugural address by the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, that it's the era of impunity. Now, there are certain states which are trampling the international law. Now, it's also specifically talk about that Gaza is a non-stop nightmare that threatens to take the entire region with it. We've seen very unequivocal support coming from the United Nations Secretary General himself. We have seen the agencies under the ambit of the United Nations, which were working for the humanitarian cause within the Gaza Strip. They have also come under fire by the Israeli Defense Forces. What do you expect how the United Nations should have acted after 7th of October, particularly when we saw the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, condemning this brutality? There was talk by the Israeli officials of him also going for resignation. How do you see that?
You see, these statements haven't had any effect on the ground. So it stays only on the archives, it stays on TV, it stays on newspaper, but it have no effect on the ground. So we have to understand that whatever Guterres will say, whatever the United Nations resolutions coming out, Israeli state are not going to listen to that. So if we understand the equation this way, so we have to deal in a different way. And the only way is now to use our military to stop this genocide. There's Arab countries, there's Muslim countries, there is other countries who actually look for justice. So they have actually to support justice. What justice? Justice said that those who are living there, Palestinians, you can't just come and eliminate them because you are having recognized by the United Nations that you are the Israeli state, do what you want. This have to remove. And just a statement from Guterres, from His Excellency, from His Highness, that won't make any effect. The only solution is something on the ground, changes this situation. So, but just a statement from Guterres, as I say, it will stay on archive, it's on TV, it won't have any implementation on the ground. And it's not having, by the way.
Right, let me bring in Dr. Jamil Khan from Ambassador into the discussion also. Dr. Khan, when we talk about this current high-level segment of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly underway, since 7th of October, where the Israeli brutality continues unabated, it's been about to be a year now. Now, this is the first session of the United Nations General Assembly, the high level of it, that is taking place after that particular fateful day. Now, a lot of speeches have been made. I've also quoted some of the significant excerpts from those speeches by the world leaders over there. What difference do you think these speeches can actually make on the current situation that has unfolded since 7th of October there in Gaza?
Well, the implementable action or the decisions are not expected because the United Nations General Assembly is not an implementing agency. Basically, in very simple words, it is a debating club where various heads of states and head of government, they describe their foreign policy and they raise the point about the burning issues of the world, such as Gaza and Lebanon, what had started. So there are Ukraine. So such significant incidents which happens in the world, that is highlighted. And that is highlighted because in the very first chapter of United Nations Charter, it's given that the world community, the member states, would try and maintain the peace and harmony in the world. So whenever there is any threat to peace and harmony, all these leaders, they speak. And what are those forums where they raise these points? One is the UN General Assembly, which is the highest forum where the leaders, the top leaders of the entire world, they get together. Like in this General Assembly session, 79, there are about over 75 head of the state and head of the government. The rest of it are the foreign ministers representing their country. So highest level of the representation of the leaders. But as I said, that they don't have any power under the United Nations Charter where the General Assembly session or its resolution could be implemented. The actual organ of the United Nations, which is the Security Council, that has the teeth, that has the power, that has the legal framework under which they can implement it. But it's very unfortunate, as it has been very clearly described by the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, said that United Nations by itself is under attack. So it has rendered United Nations meaningless. And what he meant by that was the United Nations Security Council. Security Council is a totally politicized organ of the United Nations. And why it is politicized? Because there are members which have they have veto powers and they can veto any just cause of the world. Now, see what happened. If we talk about the very creation of Israel, yes, after the Balfour Accord, the declaration in 1917, then they, and that was basically, it takes you back to the history of 1897, once the Zionist movement was first established in Switzerland. And there it was decided that there should be a state for the Jews, and that should be known as the Israel. So they did it after the Balfour Declaration. And then 1948, under the resolution of 181, they established this Palestine, and they divided. They did the partition. Basically, Palestine was already there, Palestine, but they created Israel in that. And they killed about 15,000 Palestinians. They really razed the 530 villages while they had done this partition, which was again the Balfour Declaration by itself was could not meet the tentacles of any international jurisprudence where this kind of a state under these circumstances could have been established. 750,000 Palestinians were dislodged from their houses and pushed into a restricted area ever since. Then again, in 1967, the Israelis pushed further and they pushed it into Gaza. And that is again a horror story. There were 20,000 people were killed at that time, the Palestinians. And there's a whole lot of stories how many deaths and destructions have taken place. And at that time also, after the 1967 resolution, we're talking about the United Nations, we're talking about the world leaders, what they can do. The United Nations had passed at that time Security Council Resolution 242. and in which they had given instructions and orders to Israel that they should vacate all the occupied areas. Until today, they are rather trying to gain more territory rather than vacating those, including Golan Heights and all the occupied territory. They're not doing it. And then there was again their Security Council Resolution 2334, in which the Security Council, which has the power to get it implemented, and in a while I'm going to describe what powers do they have and what international law. So 2334 resolution, it very clearly says that no expansion of wherever the settlements are, they should stay there. Every day there is an expansion. Every day there is like intrusion into the Palestinian remaining land, which by itself is an open prison, not just time. Now your fundamental question.
Despite those United Nations Security Council resolutions asking Israel to do otherwise. Dr. Jamil Khan, I'll come back to you. For now, we are joined by another participant on the phone line, Dr. Salma Malik, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Salma, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, as we speak, the unabated brutality on the part of Israeli regime continues against the innocent people in Gaza. Not only that, it is also trying to hit with brutality, with impunity in Lebanon also. At the same time, this high-level segment of the United Nations 79 session is underway. Now, Dr. Jamil Khan was of the view, as we know for a fact, that this is a general debate that is underway. World leaders are making speeches, they are making addresses over there. The most important issue that has been talked about so far has been the crisis in Gaza that has unfolded since 7th of October. Dr. Jamil Khan is of the view that UNGA is not that organ that could implement any sort of a thing or any resolution that passes on any issue. It is the United Nations Security Council that has got the legal framework, that has got the mandate according to the United Nations Charter. So if the United Nations General Assembly is not able to implement, what difference these speeches or addresses by the world leaders at this particular point in time could make to the situation in Gaza?
Thank you, first of all, for having me in the program. This is a very critical aspect that you are looking at, and where it is very heartening to have most of the world leaders talking in favor of the Palestinian situation, in favor of the Palestinians as such, and they're condemning Israel. But as you have just mentioned it yourself, that what exactly does that mean beyond lip servicing? And unfortunately and tragically, there's nothing much that would happen. Yes, at least it would also make Israel look bad in the eyes of the world. But here we find that there is a general consensus, but this is a toothless, there's a powerless consensus where everyone is advocating for peace and everyone is advocating for the end of atrocities against the Palestinians. The South African leadership is calling it apartheid. Other leaders are calling it something else, but all of them are unanimous and they're using very strong terminology. But as Jamil Sahab has also pointed out, and which is evident, that technically it is the Security Council that can actually make any fundamental change in the situation. However, we have seen that the Security Council in this one past year has not been able to do anything at all. Courtesy the veto power, courtesy the fact that the Israeli lobby is extremely strong when it comes to the American vote bank, and we have also seen the type of address and the choice of words President Joe Biden has used, where he has talked about ending the war, but he is condemning the other side more and calling it Israel's principal right of self-defense as to what it has been doing, and it totally turns a blind.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of distortion. I'll have to interject over here. Unfortunately, we can't hear you properly. We'll try to reconnect with you as soon as there happens to be a reconnection, and that happens to be smooth. We'll take you back online. Mr. Baker Younis, when we talk about the United Nations Security Council, the relevant resolutions which have been talked about by Dr. Jamil Khan, we have also seen that speech made by US President Joe Biden. It seems that he's very much concerned about the kind of suffering the innocent people in Gaza they've been facing since 7th of October. He's talked about a ceasefire over there as well. He's also talked about the two-state solution. Now, in your earlier take, you talked about that very creation of State of Israel that actually subsequently led to this state of affairs. What about the two-state solution and how that particular thing at this point in time is doable?
See, Biden speaks about two-state solution, and at the same time he's still supporting the Israeli with the war weapons, all the weapons, most advanced, sophisticated weapons. He's supporting them. He's still sending them. Every day there is a new, ammunition comes to the Israeli army, and they have more weapons, they have more ability to kill Palestinians. At the same time, they want two-state solution. So this is not, the equation doesn't work like this. You want two-state solution, you have then to give, if you want to support this idea, you have to give the same weapons you are giving to the Israelis to give it to the Palestinians. Will this be possible? This won't be possible because they don't look at us as people who deserve to live. People deserve to own the land. So this is the problem. They don't have this respect of our life. This human. They have named us as they have named Palestinians as the animal human. See, that's how they deal with us. Killing Palestinians, not two-state solution. And by the way, the two-state solution states that the Palestinian state should be a state that it protects the Israeli state. Why should we? Do Pakistan have to protect other state? Do America have to protect other state? To Saudi Arabia? So this actually, you are giving us a condition. You want to be a state, you should be disarmed, you should protect Israel, you should live under Israeli occupation, you have to live according to Israeli rules. So which kind of two-state? This is something not acceptable. So it can't be accepted. It doesn't go. Works with the common sense.
So if the two-state solution is not the solution, as per your view, what is the way forward then? You already talked about completely removing the state of Israel from there. How is that doable? I mean, in practical terms, if that brutality continues unabated till today, and the entire world community, despite a lot of condemnations that have been going on since then, since 7th of October, when this reign of terror was unleashed, if they couldn't actually collectively stop, despite those injunctions by the International Court of Justice also, condemnations by the United Nations, the major powers in the region as well. We've also seen some sort of condemnation coming from the Western countries as well to the brutality that is being unleashed. Even if the entire world couldn't stop this brutality from going ahead, how can State of Israel be removed as per your understanding?
First of all, see, this state have been made, which means it wasn't there before. It wasn't before 1948. It wasn't before that. So it is something new happened in the region. Okay, it's how many? 70 years, 75 years. So it's not something new. So of course it can be removed. Secondly, it is not a state. We know they are occupiers. So I won't call Netanyahu as the prime minister. I will call him the prime occupier. So we have an occupier and we have his army, cold army, gangsters who killing Palestinians. So if we look at them in the right way, not considering them as a state because they have never been a state. See, they were killers. So a killer should go to jail. Killers should face the justice. Killers shouldn't be given a state. So that's how we should deal. Now, politicians are unable to do this work. Yes, who will do it? Then the armies. So we have Muslims army, we have different Muslim army, we have, mashallah, very strong armies. The armies have to move.
Of course, that also requires the political will. Let me take the view of Dr. Jamil Khan on this. Dr. Jamil Khan, this two-state solution, Mr. Baker Younis is of the view that when we talk about the position the Biden administration in particular has taken since that fateful day, so on one side it continues to supply Israel with weapons and all that aid, and on the other side they talk about the two-state solution. So there happens to be a contradiction in whatever they say and whatever they act. Also, Mr. Baker Younis is of the view that the two-state solution is not viable. Could you please shed a bit of light regarding as to the viability of the two-state solution in particular?
No, we describe things in the contextual background. Now, if all these Security Council resolutions under which the State of Israel, legally or illegally, now legally in a way that the Security Council resolution is there, and the General Assembly resolution is there of the partition. The Balfour Declaration is there. And we know there was bad intention in it. And that's for sure. But whatever is it, that's the practical thing on ground. Now, my brother Abu Bakr Younis, what he has suggested, I'm coming on that also, that all the OIC member countries are the Muslim countries, they join their hands and heads together. Fine enough. They have not been able to get together on a platform of the OIC, which is a legal platform which has been formed under the United Nations Charter Chapter 8, and they have their own the charter, this OIC, which in a very first preamble, in the 8th paragraph, it says that all the members of OIC, they would support the very cause of the Palestine and give them full support. And then in the Article 18 of the same charter, it's very clearly stipulated that there would be an Assistant Secretary General additional who would be looking after the interest of the Palestine and keep raising this point around the world. So, and then in their own charter, Article 9 and Article 8, they could call an emergency session of the head of their government and states. They have not. They've done it once, and just for the formality's sake, just one resolution. So we understand and we know what is our strength so far as the Muslim countries are concerned. The only danger is that now the rulers of these Muslim countries and the OIC members, let's say OIC member countries, basically they are now quite fearful that their own people are getting very frustrated what they are seeing. In fact, the entire world is getting very frustrated. Muslims are otherwise. Any country which has any respect for the human right, any respect for the humanity, any respect for the human life and dignity, we saw the head of state and head of government, what they've been describing during this very session. Brazilian President was very vocal about the atrocities, what is going on in Palestine. There are other, and if French, the president has called for this emergency meeting as we are talking. The meeting can start any time, the Security Council meeting, although I don't expect much from it because France is the ally of the United States, and if there is anything detrimental or against the wish and the will of the Israel, the US is going to veto it. They've been doing it. They did it 3 resolutions in past 1 year, which was trying to bring peace in Palestine, and they vetoed it. Coming back on the point, on the very point about two-state theory, two-state theory was agreed by both sides. The Palestinians and as well as Hamas did not agree with it, that's true. But then otherwise Palestinian administration, they had agreed, and the Israel and the brokered by the United States and Oslo Accord had taken place in 1993. That was agreed, but Israel doesn't accept it. As a matter of fact, Israel doesn't respect that. Israel didn't respect other Security Council resolutions. So what is the way forward? If the world, now this very UN General Assembly, all the head of the states, they are bringing Palestine and Gaza into the main focus of the discussion. And once they are doing that, that means there is a pressure on these countries who do the veto. They understand that the world the opinion is going against them. To what extent they can ignore it, time would tell. They can't ignore it for indefinite period. We have to have in our mind why there has to be some reason that United States is so vehemently they support Israel. While on one side they are talking about the peace process, and they're not being, and on the other side they are vetoing some of the resolutions which were in the favor of the peace. And then Joe Biden's own
Jamil Khan, this particular two-state solution and the current situation as far as the US administration's stance regarding the right of self-defense of Israel is concerned. Now, when we talk about the two-state solution in particular, certain factions, even you already mentioned like Hamas, the Palestinian resistance group, didn't accept that. Others accepted it, but it was Israel which also didn't accept it, right? So, given that particular situation and Israel resorts to this brutality, where would it end even if some factions from the Palestinian side don't agree to that. And Israeli Prime Minister also doesn't agree to that. And this particular brutality continues with the US administration's unflinching resolve of defending Israel, supplying it with aid and weapons also. But at the same time, the world leaders, with a collective understanding as to the brutality unleashed by Israel, talks about it at the UNGA, at the United Nations Security Council meetings. They condemn it. Even the United Nations Secretary General condemns it. But what's the solution? What's the way forward?
First of all, why the world has not...
Would this continue like this as it is happening since 7th of October for 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years?
It's against the law of nature. It can't go unabated. It can't go for indefinite period, because the Newton third law of motion, every action has its own reaction, equal and opposite reaction. Now, this is what I was mentioning. That even in the countries, 57 countries of the OIC members, even in those respective countries, the rulers have started feeling the shocks and the waves of their own population. What are their feelings? And any time there could be an uprising, and it can start from any country. And that's why the rulers are quite worried about it. And there was some indication by some very important rulers of these member countries. So it appears that if these states do not really participate in the resistance, I would say, and the resistance is authorized within the United Nations resolution, that is a UNGA resolution 2649, in which the people, occupied people, have all the rights to resist with whatever tools they have. And that's what the Hamas did on the 7th.
Is it now only incumbent upon the people who have been occupied under this particular resolution 2649 you've just mentioned? Is it only allowed for those people who are under the illegal occupation to resist and take whatever means they deem necessary in order to put up that resistance against the illegal occupation? What about the broader region? What about those countries who feel the very heat of what is going on over there?
If we go into the details of the debate of this resolution, it's very clearly indicated in the debate and mentioned at various places during the debate that the world community should support such resistance by the occupied population of any territory. So the world leaders have obligation under this resolution to support them in the whatever means available within the framework of United Nations.
That's exactly the point that I just wanted to get the clarity about. The world community should support that particular resistance by whatever the means, all means necessary to that particular resistance against the illegal occupation. With this particular provision that there could be a support from the world community in that resistance, don't you think that is exactly what Netanyahu wants, to drag the entire region into that particular conflict, and that could linger on for years and years on?
No, Netanyahu has one particular agenda in his mind. That is the Greater Israel. And the Greater Israel concept started from, as I said earlier, from 1897. Once the very foundation of the Zionism was laid in Switzerland. And thereafter, I gave you all the details of Balfour Declaration and 1948 and onward. So yes, Netanyahu has the same agenda in his mind, and carrying that agenda forward, he's trying to attract Iran into it. And the first target of Netanyahu is like once Israel thought that Iraq is going to develop some enrichment. They started doing some enrichment. They made sure that Iraq is totally destroyed. Now, Iran has reached to that level of enrichment where they can produce the nuclear grade weapon anytime they like. After 60 and 65 grade enrichment, it's very easy, and it's a matter of days and weeks to really attain that. And who knows that what level. So Israel, right from the very beginning, was totally scared about it and was totally against about the nuclear accord which had which was done between P5 plus 1. And now Israel feels that this is the right time to drag United States, which is supporting from all standpoint, but except that they don't want to get dragged at this point in time because they know that it's going to really evolve a disaster in the entire world. So therefore, they are not doing it. But the United States was very clear in their statements, even the President of the United States, that if Israel is attacked, and their interpretation of attack is the same as the 7th of October. Now, if they would not call it that, it was a open air prison which was broken by Hamas, and then they came out in the territory which was occupied by the occupier, and they conducted an operation. Then that becomes debatable. Obviously, no one would support the death of the children and women anywhere in the world. But then basically there was a provision under which the occupied land, the inhabitants of the occupied land could resist in whatever manner they can and come out of that open prison. This is Palestine is an open prison.
That's what exactly we saw. As per your understanding, the Palestinian resistance group Hamas going in, trying to break that open air prison, and then what we saw subsequently on the part of Israeli forces. Now, President Joe Biden talks, and he specifically mentioned this particular thing in his UNGA address, which of course happened to be his last of the world body, that the world must not flinch from the horrors of Hamas' 7 October attack on Israel. Now, at the same time, he also... Please go ahead.
That by itself is a demonstration of what mindset the Joe Biden has. On one side, he is not bothered about almost 42,000 people, being killed by Israel. It's atrocity.
He was also going through hell. Dr. Khan has also talked about them, that they are also going through hell. But at the same time, he's also talked about the first point that we were discussing. Whenever there is a resistance against the illegal occupation, that resolution 2649 you talked about, the world community has the responsibility to support that particular resistance. The question that I asked you was whether that particular resistance, combined or a collective resistance against illegal occupation of Israel, would drag the entire region or might drag the entire world into that particular conflict. US President has said that the United States has been determined to prevent a wider war that engulfs the entire region.
Do you think? And with the same length and breadth, not in this speech, but other statements, the United States leaders, including the President, that if Israel is attacked, then we'll have to come into the theater, a word to that effect. So that which Israel knows, that if they are able to drag, because all the warships and all their war machines are around this region and around this Gaza and Lebanon and this Gulf area and in this Asian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. So they have all these assets where they are fully prepared to cater for. And why they have that they are trying to deter the regional countries to support basically Hamas, or for that matter Lebanon, or to come for the rescue of those people who are under the intense attack of and illegal attacks by Israel. And then who else other than this President of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, has given all the figures himself during his yesterday night's speech, indicating how many people have been killed by Israel. 172 journalists killed and 820 mosques were destroyed, 7,000 children. And he kept narrating all the incidents, the barbarism. And Iranian president also said the same thing. The King Abdullah said the same thing. So all the leaders are raising this point at the top of their tongue. But would there be any? That shows one thing, that if Israel is able to successfully drag United States into it, that is only possible if Iran gets involved, if the regional countries involved. And then who knows where that.
Dr. Jamil Khan, I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Mr. Baker Younis into the discussion also. Mr. Younis, when there is the provision of the world community coming to the aid or the support of that resistance against the illegal occupation, as per that resolution that has been mentioned by Dr. Jamil Khan, don't you think it's going to drag the entire region? The repercussions, the implications of that particular support to that resistance are going to be humongous.
See, first of all, these laws are not made for us. These laws are made for them. It's not applicable. We are not considered in these laws. We have to understand that if we go to United Nations, complain, if we go to the international law, complain, they will just simply reply us that no, you are not the people who have this law applied to them. So we are not included in these laws. So you have seen what the Indians have done with in Kashmir. What laws are there?
The Palestinians are not included. Why they are being talked about? Why their issues are being highlighted?
Because the Israelis are being killed. That's why. Because the Israeli army is unable to defeat the Palestinians in Gaza. That's why. It's not because of the Palestinians. It's not because they want to give us freedom. It's not because they care about our life. No, not at all. It's because the 7th of October have hurt them too much. Why? Because the Palestinians woke up. The Palestinians are able to produce their own weapons. It's been 70 years, 100 years where the Palestinians are occupied. 70 years, basically, the Israeli states are there. And yes, the Palestinians are able to produce their own weapons. They're able to attack the Israelis. They're able to stop their Merkavas.
How much damage after that 7th of October, that very day, how much damage have the Palestinians been able to inflict in counterattacks to Israel's aggression?
It's very huge. You see, when you have your tanks entering a place, been under siege since 17 years, and yes, it's yet been destroyed. So it's a defeat. What else you want? You have the most advanced tanks, bigger ones, and yes, still a young man with handmade, homemade weapons destroy a tank. Isn't it a defeat? This is the defeat. They are actually being defeated. Yes, they are killing whom? But killing children, killing civilians. They are unable to defeat the resistance power in Gaza. This is the problem. No, it's not about Hamas, it's not about Al-Jihad, it's not about the groups of Palestinians. It's about the Palestinians themselves, that they are able to produce weapons. And not any normal weapons, no. Those weapons which actually able to destroy those tanks which been made by engineers, Israelis, Americans. So actually what more we want? Now, it's what I believe that the other nations have to stand neutral and have to stand with justice. Justice says that you have, as you say, have to go and support the resistance power.
Okay, here is
but it's not happening yet.
Okay, here is the scenario. We've seen the condemnations, the speeches being made at the UNGA. We've also seen that case brought in by South Africa, the preliminary injunctions by the International Court of Justice, all that happening on that particular front. The resistance internally underway, inflicting damage, as per your understanding, to the opposition, the Israeli Defense Forces also, that you deem is a victory. Given the fact there has been a huge loss of life and a considerable number of injuries accrued because of that bombardment by Israel. Now, if the major powers come into this particular resistance supporting Palestinians, what about the major powers in the West which been showing their unflinching resolve to the defense of state of Israel? Don't you think this is going to lead to a massive escalation as far as and repercussions of unfathomable scale for this particular region? Because it would, as Dr. Jamil Khan also said, that perhaps Israel want the US to be dragged into this particular conflict. Once it is in, then what are going to be the repercussions for the entire world?
So, because of we have to prevent the world from fighting each other, we should keep silent as the Palestinians, except the Israeli occupiers.
Shouldn't there be other ways?
What other ways? What give me away? I want my country back. I want my home back. I want justice for my kids who have been killed, justice for my family who have been killed. How you give me justice? Are you gonna put the killer in jail or not? Are you gonna kill the killer or not? This is the only justice we have. Okay. What else justice we have?
Okay, let me take the point of view of Dr. Jamil Khan. It's the last minute of the show. Dr. Jamil Khan, quickly, if you could, are there any alternative ways other than this particular armed resistance against this illegal occupation?
No, definitely there are many ways. In fact, if nothing else, at least this OIC, they can start doing a bilateral, imposing bilateral sanction on Israel. They can close their airspace for Israel. They would not be able to get the arms and ammunition. 700 soldiers of Israeli soldiers have been killed so far in this operation. There are more to come. And definitely Israel is also suffering, but then Israel has a complete goal in front of them, and Israel is West and West is Israel. Basically, the entire West is supporting Israel so far as their aggression is concerned. So therefore, I think there is going to be a resistance, perhaps the homegrown resistance, which has happened. Iraqi resistance group has gone and attacked Golan Heights, right? So you will find that there are people, the groups would start taking international law into their own hands, like Israel has taken international law into their own hands. The other part is that people, although the state, the rulers are not willing because they are themselves quite scared, quite suppressed, and they have their own considerations. For the population there, my fear is that you will find more what they call terrorism. You'll find more resistance from various groups and from various countries joining. I only wish that it doesn't happen, because if it happens, there won't be any end to it. And this is what they are going towards, that scenario of the international law is not implemented. It's Chapter 6 and Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter is not implemented to control Israel. Then that is the only resultant way that the people would find and take international law.
Well taken, Dr. Jamil Khan, former ambassador, joining us on Skype. Unfortunately, I have to end the show over here. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Mr. Baker Younis, Arab journalist. Mr. Younis, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. And we'll have to look, the time will reveal. It's just a couple of days from now that the UNGA 79th session ends. There are a lot of speeches being made. It's the most important issue has been the Gaza crisis. Let's see what transpires as this particular session ends. Till the next episode, take good care of yourselves.